Hi everyone, my name is Leanne and today I'm going to be wrapping up everything that I read in August. I had such a good reading month, so I'm so excited to share my mini reviews of the 7 books that I read in the month. I did have such a good reading month, so I'm just going to jump straight into the books, and also I'm filming this on my lunch break, so I need to be fairly speedy. So I'm going to kick things off with The Love of My Life by Rosie Walsh. This is of course a proof copy, but the final book is out now if you are interested in getting your hands on a copy. I enjoyed this book so much. Rosie Walsh is the author of The Man Who Didn't Call, and I think this book is even better than that book, and I really enjoyed that one. She kind of takes situations that might be more familiar to us as readers of rom-coms, but gives them this kind of thriller angle to them. This book is so page-turning. I was absolutely racing to the end and didn't want to put it down. We are following Emma and her family. Emma is a fairly well-known marine biologist. She presented a TV show a couple of years ago that gets repeated semi-regularly. Her husband Leo is an obituary writer for a newspaper, and when Emma becomes ill, he starts thinking about what he would write for her obituary, and this leads him to digging into her life a little bit more, and he realizes there are things that just don't add up about her life. And his suspicions aren't ungrounded. Emma has lied throughout their relationship about so many things, including what her name is. We are jumping between different perspectives in this book, predominantly Emma's and Leo's, which is a narrative device that I really enjoy. Over the course of the novel, we're following the truth unfold, and there were so many moments in this novel where I was like, I know what's going on here, but I wasn't quite right. Really excellent book, highly recommend this one. I also read One Night on the Island by Josie Silver. This is about Cleo, who is a dating columnist approaching her 30th birthday, and her boss suggests that to celebrate and mark her 30th birthday, she does something a little bit different. The plan is that Cleo will go to this remote cabin on an island off the west coast of Ireland and go through a ceremony whereby she will be marrying herself. Cleo's a little bit reluctant about this, but eventually she comes around to the idea of this solo adventure. But when she arrives at the cabin, it turns out that there's been a bit of an admin error, and there is an American man who is also meant to be staying at this cabin. I'm sure we can guess what happens. Overall, I did really enjoy this book. I liked the chemistry between the two characters. I like how their backgrounds were fleshed out as individuals, and they seemed like they had complex and nuanced backgrounds themselves. It wasn't solely about the connection between the two of them, it was also about their extended lives. My one slight criticism of this book was I would have loved if the author had subverted what we come to expect from a romance novel. I'm a firm believer that just because a relationship doesn't last forever doesn't mean that it wasn't a successful or happy relationship, story, etc. Some relationships are not meant to last forever, and I think I would have appreciated the recognition for a situation like that. You know, sometimes a holiday romance can just be a holiday romance, but I digress. You may know the author from her debut book, One Day in December, which I absolutely loved. I've not read her second book, The Two Lives of Lydia Bird, so if you've read that one, do let me know down in the comments, because I've really enjoyed both of her books, so wondering if I should pick out her second book as well and dive into that one. I also read The X Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon. I enjoyed this so much. This was just fun. It was so much fun. So this is a romance novel about Shay and Dominic. Shay has worked at this radio station for a decade. Dominic is like newly graduated from a journalism course, hasn't been in the industry long, but feels like he knows everything about radio. The radio station is undergoing some changes, and their boss opens the floor for ideas of how they could change things up. Shay suggests a dating talk show, like a dating podcast, that is hosted by two people who used to be in a relationship, hosted by exes. This idea really catches on, but her boss also notices the tension between Shay and Dominic and actually thinks they would be the perfect people to host this show, despite them having never been in a relationship before. So they start pretending for the sake of the show that they used to be together. Naturally, in order to keep up this lie, Shay and Dominic need to spend more time together and learn more about each other. And then they realize that maybe they quite like each other. One of my absolute favorite romance tropes is fake dating, and I feel like this really puts a new spin on that, in that it's like a fake breakup that then turns into a legitimate relationship. Really enjoyed this. I thought the chemistry was like spot on. It didn't fall into that trap of like enemies to lovers where they clearly were never actually enemies. Like, it's totally believable that these two people don't get on, until they start spending more time together. The spicy scenes were good. I would just describe this book as just a solid good time. Would really recommend it if you're into this kind of rom-com fiction. Unfortunately, the most disappointing book that I read in August was Sex and Rage by Eve Babbitt. You may remember me talking about this one in my most recent book haul. I do kind of wish that I read some reviews of this before I bought it, because I think the best thing about this book is its title, and I'm finding that more and more with books that have these quite provocative titles that catch my attention, because there was very little sex in this book and very little rage, and that's also how I felt about the book Weird Fucks. Like, I was like, there's not enough weird fucking in this. This is a semi-autobiographical novel that is set in Los Angeles in the 1970s, and it follows a character named Jacaranda, essentially floating through this world of drink, drugs, and men. Some might say this is written in a stream of consciousness style, some might say it's poorly edited, and essentially it's musings on a life that is centered around privilege and being irresponsible. There's no real plot to this book, and you know, I've loved many books that don't have a proper plot to them. I really just found that this was presenting itself to be something more profound than it actually was, and something more edgy or perhaps bohemian than it actually was. And once again, I will reiterate, there was hardly any sex and there was hardly any rage. And that's what I was promised. That's what it says on the front. It says sex and rage, and that's what I wanted, and I had neither. And the one YA book that I read in August was I Kissed Sara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston. Somehow, this was my first Casey McQuiston. I've not read any of her other books, although I do have Red, White and Royal Blue on my shelf. And again, this is a book that was just so much fun, and I think that's why I had such a good reading month overall, was just so many of these books. They were fun. That's what they were fun. So this is set in an American high school. It is a Christian academy. Sara Wheeler is the daughter of the head teacher. She's kind of like the perfect girl. She is a good Christian, she's beautiful, she's prom queen. But the book begins when she goes missing, and we are introduced to 3 different characters who are part of Sara's life. So we have Chloe, who is kind of her school rival. They both want to be valedictorian. They've always had this kind of academic rivalry, and we find out that just before her disappearance, Sara kissed Chloe. We also have Rory, who is Sara's neighbor, who she also kissed before her disappearance. And then we also have her boyfriend, Smith. Sara has left a series of clues that she wants the 3 of them to work together on in order to try find out what's going on with her. It's kind of Paper Towns-esque if Paper Towns was better and gay. And there is a variety of queer representation in this book. Sexuality, gender identity, they're all explored at various moments throughout the book. And particularly what those experiences are like when you are in a kind of small American town in the South where it's quite Christian, religious. But yeah, really enjoyed this one. It was the main book that I was reading on my holiday to Milan, and it was the perfect book to be reading on holiday. I only read one children's book in August, and that was Pages & Co. The Book Smugglers by Anna James. This is the 4th book in the Pages & Co. series. I'm sure lots of you are familiar with this series. It's one that I've spoken about on the channel before as I've been making my way through the series. But for those of you that don't know, the first book begins with Tilly, who works in her grandparents' bookshop, and she realizes that she has the magical ability to book wander, and that is essentially to step into some of her favorite stories. In this 4th book, we have a new perspective, so we're not just following Tilly, but we are following Milo, and I actually really enjoyed this new perspective. I thought it was a great way to give the series a new perspective and keep it fresh. Some of the books that they wander into in this installment of the series are The Railway Children and The Wizard of Oz. I didn't read either of these books as a kid. I still don't really know the story of The Railway Children, but I have, you know, I've seen The Wizard of Oz film. I've seen many different kind of adaptations of that story, so I'm familiar with that. And I really enjoyed how both of them were included in the book, the one that I recognized and one that I didn't know so much about. I just think these books are so much fun. I love learning more about the magic system and how book wandering works. I love how playful these novels are, not just in terms of, you know, Anna James's storytelling, but also the inside illustrations and also the really inventive typesetting that is used in these books. I think are so much fun. I would really describe this series as just a comfort blanket. If you love books, if you love children's books in particular, then I'm sure you would find so much joy in these books. And finally, I read a non-fiction book in August, and that was How to Talk to Robots by Tabitha Goldstaub. Now, the title of this is somewhat provocative. It's not necessarily robots in the sense that we might imagine them from like sci-fi. It's really a book that is about AI, artificial intelligence. And it's a book that really encourages women in particular to be engaged with AI and these emerging technologies. It takes a look at the history of the developments in this field and highlights some key figures, particularly key women, and the roles they've played in the development of artificial intelligence. And it gets their perspectives on why it's so important to be engaged with technology. This book gave me so much to consider that I hadn't thought about before, and why it is so important that women don't get left behind. The tech industry, STEM, it's still male dominated. And when the author outlines how artificial intelligence learns, she is quick to highlight that if it is only men that are participating in the development of AI, it will pick up the misogynistic habits that many men, whether that is consciously or subconsciously in how they've been socialized, it's picking up those habits. If the AI is only learning from people who have particular prejudices, the AI will then learn that prejudice. It really encourages women to take a step up to AI, even in little ways, if it's using the voice controls on devices that you already have. The author does understand why people might be reluctant to do that. There's lots of conversations around, data being collected for unsavory reasons, but she offers a lot of reassurance on that, and also how you can protect yourself from particular issues. And she shows the reader how you can get artificial intelligence to work for you. I thought this was really great. I think the author did a fantastic job of breaking down something that is actually, pretty complicated into something that I could understand. And it's a book that has led me to make active decisions in changing how I operate my life. So I would really encourage you to pick this one up. I think it's better to, be involved in something like this than avoid it and let it pass you by. So that's it. They are all of the books that I read in August. I will leave them all linked down below in the description if you want to find out more about them. A really solid reading month. I think even the things that I didn't enjoy so much, although it was a pretty great success rate, I was really engaged with them and had a lot of thoughts around them. So yeah, really pleased with how my reading went in August. If you want to share any of your thoughts down below in the comments, please do. But if you don't have anything in particular to say, leave me a robot emoji so that I know that you're here. That is it for me today. I hope you guys are doing well, and I will speak to you in my next video.